Are you new to programming in React and would like to learn use context? Then this tutorial is for you. Hi everyone, my name is Yazan and I'm a instructor at Integrify Academy. We upload new content on YouTube every Thursday. Today I'm going to walk you through the use context in React and let's build some basic stuff with it. Alright, let's go.
All right, so what are we going today to talk about, as mentioned, is the context API. So let's have a brief introduction first about it. So first of all, why do we need the context, and what should we know beforehand before diving into actually practicing or reading about the context API? So there are several problems for React actually to consider context as a solution. Most importantly is basically how the data flows into the application. And that's like a very common problem in React. And there are so many solutions actually to solve this problem, whether you want to go with React Context or Redux or other frameworks or libraries that solve the same thing. So it's actually like a big problem or big issue that has so many solutions, and you literally just get confused on what to implement. So the idea here is of today's tutorial is actually to show you the basics, how it works, and then from there, once you are aware of the basics and how it works, then you will be able to make decisions in the future of how to do or actually when to use it, and if you really need it in your project. So first of all, before you even try with React context, you should have at least experience or some familiarity with React components, props, prop drilling, states. So you have to have this at least some experience about this in order to digest and to know about what we're going to talk about today. So as I mentioned, the main problem here is actually the prop drilling. So in React, the data flows from it's one direction, from parent to its all children. So if this is our parent component, that this is a state, and we have a kind of a goal that we want to move that specific data to all the way to this children. So the React way, if you want to do it, or the default way, is to pass the data as a prop from parent to its children, then the children to the other children, and so on until you get to your destination. So while this is might like just look fine if it's only one level or maximum two level, when the application gets bigger, you might get greedy, and then you start keep drilling all the way, and if you do that with a large scale or at least medium scale, then you start to encounter problems where you have to actually, if you want to modify something or change a prop name, then you need to make sure that you double check all this kind of all the tree from top to bottom, just to make sure that they all adapt to your new changes. And that means you have to maintain so many things, and not to mention uh, a really big list of props each component would have. So it's not the best way. So it's highly recommended, if you're talking about prop drilling, is to only just to do one level or two levels like maximum. If you see yourself you're doing more than that, then look into other alternatives. And one of the alternatives is React Context. So when we look at the React Context, so it has a really good kind of way of consuming. So what do we have is there are two parts of that React application. We have the provider that actually provides data to the children, and then any of these nodes, any of these children can actually subscribe and consume from this provider. So for example, that specific children here, it's interested to get some data from the provider, from the main state. So what it could do is just, hey, I can now subscribe, and now I can get the data directly from this children, or from this parent to that children, without actually then needing to go all the levels way down from parent to children. So It's pretty neat solution, and it's really good for sure. It has advantages and some and disadvantages, and there are some, some you have to be aware of a couple of things which I'm going to mention towards the end of this session. So let's dive deep into building a very basic kind of just example, just to show you how this is actually done. So so first of all, we need to create the context, and usually, so this is the code. I have a basically just some React application, so nothing here really special. So first of all, what I'm going to do is you have to create the context file. So usually they live under context folder and then followed by the name of the context. So I'm using here we are going to build like the theme context, and using here JavaScript instead. So first of all, what you need to do is you need to use the create context, and so we start by writing the theme context. So the theme context, and using create context that's coming from React. So at this point, what we need to do is we need to export that theme context. We can export it as a default export. So creating the context is as easy, as simple as that. You can define an initial value. What do you want to have? Do you want it to be like undefined? This means it's undefined, or you want to have to be an array or an object like or a string. So it's up to you what do you want to do. But because the focus of this tutorial is to keep everything basic and just straight to the point, so I'm gonna keep it just basic as mentioned. Creating the context is as easy as that, just by just invoking this method, and just saving it to a variable that can be reused somewhere else. So the next part of it, so once we create the context, we still need two things. We still need, as we mentioned earlier, we need the provider, which actually holds all the data, and then we need the consumer. So let's talk about how can we use that provider. So the theme context itself, the one that we just created, it can expose us to two kind of properties. One of them is the provider, and the other is the consumer. So so the provider is what we really are interested to know. So if I want to actually give this specific children access to the provider, or to my state, I need to make sure that this specific component actually live within my provider. So it makes no sense if the like it wouldn't work if the provider actually is wrapping these two components, and if you try to access something from that provider that wraps those two components, it wouldn't be able to actually get the data. So you have to wrap the provider with the component that you want to use this data from. So in this case here, I will have the provider right in the app. So you could do that by importing the theme context from the context here API, and then you can access the .provider. And at this point now here, we have created the provider, and now we tell it that, hey, please provide whatever in my theme context to what to the children's. So now you can basically uh, in you can have this at the highest level, like you can wrap the entire application with a theme provider, and then the entire application, everything that is inside your application will have access to that provider. And you can do it for individual pieces. For that, I will mention later, like what's the advantage and disadvantage of having this kind of pattern. So now we have the provider, and then inside the provider, we can tell, hey, to which components can have access to it. So I'm going to create like a child component here. So component. I have yet to create this component, but for some reason there is no errors showing. That's weird. So next thing is here, what is missing that in this provider, and we would have it completed, is the value property. So the value prop. The value is it represent what is the kind of the current state of that provider. And guess what? If we're talking about state, we need to actually create the states that holds this actual the state of the provider. So what we could do here, we could just have a state, and set state that we can use the use state from React. And as a default value, what I can do here, I can say, okay, now the state is light. But because this is like a theme, so I would rather go with theme and set theme just to make it easier, like for readability. And now what we could do here inside the value, now we can pass our state or anything that we want to do or we want to pass. We can pass it as a value here. So what this means? It means that anything you have inside this value prop, it will be able to the children will be able to consume from that. So if you have any variable here and you try to consume the context from a children, you will have access to these stuff. So here it's up to you. What do you want? What kind of data you want to have it available to the children to consume? So now we are in a good position. So now we have created the context. We now are creating the provider, or we already did create the provider. So we are one step away to complete the three main concepts of this context. So the last step is actually building the consumer. So for that, I'm going to create a component, and I'm going to call it the child component as I did here, and we go with GSX. So that child component here, we just basically we can have a function. Wait, did we go with functions here? Yes. So a function, child component, and let's do a namely export there. So we have a child component, and inside the child component, let's just for now return. Let's just say hey child component. I just want to make sure that it's running. Let's make sure that our code is actually running. So this has to be imported. Let me just import that in a moment. So import child component from child component. Yes, this looks fine. So if we try to go and check our website, all right, here you go. So you can see we have the child component rendered. So we are in a good stage. Next up, what we want to do here is go to the child component and actually continue the last step of finishing the entire thing, which is actually consuming. So to do a quick recap, we already created the context. That's one. Second, we already created the provider. The last one is consuming from the provider. And how to do that? There are multiple ways to do it, but the easiest way is to use the useContext hook, and using useContext hook will allow you to consume from the provider. So in this case, what I can do here, I could just call it a context, call a variable, call a context, and then I can say use context. And then here you can define, okay, which context do you want to use to. So if you remember in the theme GS, we have this theme context. So we need to pass this theme context to our consumer, so we know what context we are consuming from. So we pass theme context. And if I right now try to console log the context, you will see that we have what we want. So if I open now the log, let me just open it there. I see a lot of errors. We will get those errors. Let's refresh. Maybe that's because of the. Yes, cool. So let me zoom in. You see right now, if I console log the context variable, I already have access to the values that I sent in the provider, which is the theme, its slide, and the set theme variable. So it's all there. We already finished what we want to do. So that's great. Now next, let's just make it actually, let's use these values. And so how can we use it? Let's just have something fun here. So first of all, I'm going to wrap this into maybe into a div here, because we'll have a group of children. So now I can say, I can destructure actually from context. Because I need the theme and I need the set theme. So destructuring is done. Now what I can do here, I could say, okay, now the current theme is, I could just write current theme is, and now I can add, the theme here, just for having fun. If I refresh now the page, let me just close this and then put current theme is light. Nice. So let's try to actually manipulate and change that value. So what I'm going to use, and I'm going just to use a button that actually has like change theme, and inside the button, sorry for that, inside the button, I'm going to have an on click. So on click will actually just handle change theme. I will create a separate function for that. I do like creating functions outside this return method. So right now what I can do here, I can inside the function when it gets invoked, I can use this set theme so I could update my context. So yeah, let's do that. So now we say set theme, and because it's a toggle, so what we want to say is we say, okay, if theme is equal light, then let's change it to dark, or else it's going to be light. Cool. Yeah, I think that's about it. So if you go back and try to click this change theme, see, boom, current theme is dark, current theme is light, dark and light. And here it's up to you what you want to do with that, with this information. Maybe you have some styling, some CSS. Let's just write some inline CSS here and show you just like one basic approach. So we could check like, hey, is there any, is the theme is light? You know, if it's light, I will have the color as red, or else I will have it as blue, you know, just for fun. So you see current theme is dark, and then when I click that, it turns to red. Cool, right? So that's actually like about a basic use context or a context API, and for sure, what's good about that the context that it doesn't only accept just primitive values like strings or numbers, but it can be way more complicated or complex structure here, like an objects, for example. And you can use reducer here, like, you know, the sky is the limit at this point. If you know the basics and you know what it can gives you, now all I would say just, you know, your imagination is the limit. So, and it depends on what you really want to do. But for that, if you're looking for more advanced use cases, then please like leave them in the comment. So before we wrapping up, let's talk about just some like kind of like best practices or things that you should be aware of. So what this means is that you have to know that if you all components that are inside the provider, if the provider change its states, then all the components that wraps that or inside this provider will get re-rendered. So you have to make sure that you don't, you know, overuse it, or you don't use it on data that changes more frequently. Try to use the context on data that change less frequently, something like theme or locale, or something that changes really less, not every single minute, for example. And also couple of things. Also, one thing that to keep in mind, that you can use multiple contexts. You are not only trapped to use one context. You can use multiple contexts into multiple children's and so on. So that's one thing. And you can use, for example, use memo to keep the context stable and memo wise, and you don't need to recreate it every time. So there are so much that we can talk about and show you. So leave them in the comment below if you want to. If you want to see more or read more about it. So yeah, but that's about it today. I'll see you next time.